Hello， 大家好，欢迎回到外媒看中国，我是安博然。Last month, the G7 and a bunch of other Western countries issued a joint statement against the Hong Kong police for placing bounties on nearly 20 Hong Kongers who attempted to set up a government in exile overseas. Now, this act, according to Hong Kong's national security law, counts as subversion because it attempts to subvert, in other words, undermine or overthrow the government of Hong Kong. But that's not fair, the Western countries claim, after a group of 19 Hong Kongers overseas held a virtual election in June and tried to pass themselves off as the legitimate representatives of the region. They call it transnational repression, despite their own countries having similar laws. So how did they get away with such blatant double standards? Well, instead of admitting that those activists literally held an election for a fictional government in an attempt to subvert the real Hong Kong government, they just call them pro-democracy campaigners. And just like that, the wool is successfully pulled over the ordinary Westerners' eyes, and they automatically see the Hong Kong police as repressive and authoritarian. But is that fair? Today I'll break it down as we go beyond the propaganda. This is Reports on China. I'm Andy Borham here in Shanghai. Let's get reporting. In June, a group of Hong Kongers overseas held online elections for an entity they called the Hong Kong Parliament. They initially set the group up in Toronto, Canada, way back in 2022, after suggestions from activists like Simon Cheng to set up a government in exile back in 2020, following the enactment of Hong Kong's national security law. Now, do you guys remember Simon Cheng? He's the guy who was granted political asylum in the UK after claiming that Chinese police tortured him over his political beliefs. Turns out he was simply held in detention for 15 days after being caught soliciting prostitution on the mainland. He was caught on camera paying at the dodgy establishment and even confessed to the charge. But after he was released, he claimed he made the confession under torture and used the situation to gain asylum in the UK. LOL. Anyway, it took around 3 years until this so-called Hong Kong Parliament first held their illegal election, which is when Hong Kong police finally stepped up their response and issued arrest warrants for the 19 involved for subversion. Specifically, Hong Kong police allege the group aimed to overthrow the governments of Hong Kong by unlawful means, including promoting self-determination, drafting a Hong Kong constitution, and organising an illegal election. But some of their supporters claim the group wasn't really meant to be a government in exile, and instead just a group of people supporting Hong Kong from abroad. But their actions do not support that lighter analysis, especially when you look at the rules they imposed for voting in their illegal election. Check this out. Nominations were open to Hong Kong exiles only, with candidates needing to apply online for the 35 seats being offered. Voters were required to be at least 16 years of age, be born in Hong Kong or resident there for at least 7 years, or the direct offspring of such individuals. And it was also required that IDs were uploaded as proof of such status. Then the group held an online inauguration and swearing-in ceremony where members pledged to reclaim Hong Kong and recited oaths that explicitly rejected the CPC's rule. Sounds like a pretty serious attempt at a real election to me. What do you think? Organisers of the so-called Hong Kong Parliament said they received 15,000 legitimate online votes, with the winners announced on June 30. 4 of those individuals had existing Hong Kong police warrants, and 15 represented new warrants totaling 19. But those arrest warrants issued against Hong Kongers overseas made some Western governments upset. So they did what they do best whenever it comes to China, referring to legitimate policing as transnational repression, a term that stuck with Western media. The Guardian even used it directly in a headline. Transnational repression. Australia condemns Hong Kong's attempts to silence exiled dissidents, where they wrote, The Australian government has issued a joint statement issued on behalf of G7 nations condemning Hong Kong for seeking to silence, intimidate, harass, harm or coerce pro-democracy campaigners living abroad. Did you see what they just did there? Another popular Western trick. Instead of citing the real charges that the group held an illegal election to set up a new government for Hong Kong, they call them pro-democracy campaigners. Doesn't it just sound so lovely? And check this out, the article continues. Hong Kong's controversial national security law grants authorities sweeping extraterritorial powers to prosecute acts made anywhere in the world that it deems criminal. Yes, that's right, the same as every other country in the world. The countries accusing Hong Kong of transnational repression, including Australia, the UK, Canada, and the US, all have similar laws where arrest warrants can be issued for citizens overseas who have allegedly committed crimes against national security. In Australia, citizens can be imprisoned for up to 10 years for committing espionage or treason. In the UK, the punishment is even higher, life imprisonment. In Canada, the punishment is also up to life in prison. And in the US, you'd be facing 20 years behind bars. And guess what? All of those countries will issue international arrest warrants against citizens who are overseas. So what's with the double standards? Well, that is always the case when it comes to the West versus the rest, the so-called international rules-based order. It's one rule for them and another rule for everyone else. The fact of the matter is that those overseas Hong Kongers were in serious breach of their country's law when they set up a government in exile. That is a serious crime in Hong Kong, and it would be a serious crime in Australia, Canada, the UK, and the US. It's time we stopped with these double standards and treated everyone fairly. A Hong Kong spokesperson was right when they spoke about the issue recently. Any suggestion that certain individuals or organisations should be immune from legal consequences for their illegal acts is no different from advocating a special privilege to break the law, and this totally runs contrary to the spirit of the rule of law. Too right. And on that note, that will be it for today, you guys. But as always, I would love to hear your thoughts. Why is it that the West is so blatantly hypocritical? How would they feel if the shoe was on the other foot? Do let me know down below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help the channel. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.